Hey everyone, I'm Clayfect, and today I apparently make terrible resin art. Well, not completely terrible, but we're up there. I'm going to make not one, but two seals. One is going to be black and one is going to be white to symbolize this yin yang effect I'm going for. So, let's get started. The seals were actually pretty straightforward. There weren't any problem there. So I decided to start with painting the eyes. Now I wanted that yin yang effect I was talking about. So I decided to paint one of the pair of eyes blue and the other pair of eyes brown. Again, to give it this effect of the opposite. That is also why I wanted their bodies to be one that was swimming upwards and one that was swimming downwards. Again, to help with the yin yang effect. And also to give some life into it. Plus, it would also help with it remaining this simple, while still being seals. That is why you are going to see me fitting these seals together over and over again to make sure that the proportions are correct with each other. Now, while I give our little seals some clay, let me tell you a little bit more about how I got the idea for this sculpture. It is actually pretty simple. As the adult woman that I am, of course I spent a Saturday rewatching the old anime The Last Avatar cartoons. And there's an episode with some yin yang fish. And when I saw those, I told my husband that they would be way cuter as seals. And he said yeah. And then when my mom wanted a seal, then I grabbed the moment and I made my yin yang seals. And I have to say, even though the sculpture didn't quite went as I wanted it to, I had so much fun making these two different seals and making their body language fit to the color they were giving. Here I'm making the white seal that I want to swim upwards to look more positive, while the black seal is going to swim downwards, symbolizing the negative of it. Now, the yin yang symbol actually has a lot more depth and a lot more meaning than what we in the West are interpreting it as, whereas sort of the positive and the negative that is joined together and create a whole. It does have a lot more meaning than that, but it was way too philosophical and way too deep for this girl with Google to understand. So for this interpretation, I'm just going to stick with the old-fashioned opposite attracts. Though don't you worry, just because I don't want to get all philosophical on you, doesn't mean that I don't have a little bit of a story to tell about them. So why don't I do that while I am continue to making their flippity floppers. Now way up north, in the deepest blue of the ocean, some says that there are two seals there, and it's the only two of their kinds, one black and one white. In old Clayfect myth, says that these are the yin yang seals, though they prefer to go by the names black and whitey, but that's another story. Those who have seen them describe the white one as very playful, while Blackie is the more calm and gentle one of them. They are known to dance around each other most of the time. It is theorized that that dance is what is helping the world being in balance with itself, but we don't know that yet. And that was a little bit, though not all, about the yin yang seals. Now let's get back to the sculpture. With the bodies pretty much done, I started working on the heads, and the seals don't have that much of a facial definition. If you look at a seal, they are pretty much just gentle blobs. So it didn't take me that long to make them. Though I did have a lot of fun making their expression on their faces. I wanted them to be gentle to look at, like they were kind and maybe a little bit timid creatures. Just like with the bodies, I worked back and forth between the two heads in order to make them look as much alike as I could. When you make something in hand, they will never look completely similar, but if you work on them at the same time, you get pretty close if you take your time. Now with the face definition, or lack thereof, pretty much done. All I had to do was give those little guys some eyelids and then some eyebrows. Raising the eyebrows a little bit too high and make them a little bit too flat, just to make them a little bit more kind looking. And with their faces finally as I wanted them, I started working on their nose. And I will not tell you how these seals ends. My lips are sealed. When it comes to that, get it? Because it seals. No, I will stop. And I was also lying. My lips aren't sealed. The seals end up great. I am so happy with them. It's the resin that's ruining everything. But with their noses finally looking great, I could start to undecapitate them, so to speak, making sure that the body and the head joined together and become one perfect seal. And while I do that, and start on the base for these little guys, why don't I tell you a little bit more about Blackie and Whitey? Now, if you ever want to meet these two creatures, as I said, you need to dive way down, deep into the water, and go past the cold. At some point when you get near them, there will be a spot where the water feels cold and hot at the same time, and then you know you are in the right place. I will warn you though, if you find these two mythical creatures, it is very important that you don't scare them, because that could screw up with the balance of the world as we know it. Though it is said that if you're gentle and kind at heart, then they might even grant you a wish. As far as I know, that is how Leonardo DiCaprio got famous in Titanic. Anyway, that is pretty much it what I know about the seals and their backstory. Now, let's move on to the base that I'm making. I'm using aluminium foil and ultralight. The reason for that is because I don't want it to crack and ultralight doesn't crack. Plus, it's a little bit cheaper. And here you see me fitting them again. Before we move on to the paint. And believe it or not, guys, I actually enjoyed painting these ones. The design I decided to go for was so simple and still a little bit challenging. So I had a lot of fun. Blackie, of course, I painted black. While Whitey, you guessed it, got white color. Finally, it didn't matter that I was colorblind. But with the base colors down, I could finally start working on the design for them. To keep in the spirit of this mythical fantasy creature, I decided to put on the moon faces on their backs. Now, I'm not sure if I pronounced this correctly, but I made one of the seals with the waxing moon faces and the other seals with the waning moon faces. I hope you understand what I'm saying here. English can be so difficult sometimes. I mean, loosely translated in my language, we're just saying the moon that comes and the moon that leaves. It makes sense. Why do we need to put wax on the moon? I don't understand it. Anyway, very carefully I painted the pattern that I had decided before I started to give some small shades here and there. Then all I had to do was paint their noses before I moved on to painting their base. Now the base I really didn't care that much about because I knew that I would put sand on it anyway, so it was just to make sure nothing white was going to shine through. And that was pretty much it for the paint. All I had to do then was just to clean their adorable little eyes out, and they were done. Now do me a favor, guys. Look closely at them. See how cute they are. Remember them as they are right here. Look how perfect they are. I'm so proud of them. But of course, seals need water. So that was what we were going to make. But before we started playing with that, I needed to get done with the base. With the base dry, I slapped on a lot of sand on it that I had baked in the oven, just to make sure that nothing was alive on it. And when the base looked perfect like kitty litter, I started cleaning up some shells. Now these shells I had gotten from some friends that had been on vacation and collected them to me. And I'm just so happy with the effect they have. I'm so grateful that they went through that trouble and did that for me. But with the shells safely secure on the bottom, I put on a few plants before I slapped some more gravel on there, all to make it look more natural. I'm not quite sure that I actually made it look natural, but combined it with the seal and the resin, it looked pretty great. Now speaking of the devil, I had Mr. Clayfect help me with this one. The first layer of resin went great because I didn't want it to be too deep. I wanted all the air from the shell to be able to come up. And the second layer went even greater because I still didn't want to go too deep when I secured the seal. But with the third pour of resin, we did something stupid. Now every time you pour resin, it takes about 48 hours to cure, and I had lost my patience at that point, so I just kept going and going, making it deeper. Which was a bad idea for two reasons. One, my seal decided that it wanted to float, which was a problem. And two, resin apparently becomes hot when it cures, and even hotter the more resin there is. So that is why there was a lot of bubbles and the water just wasn't clear. But I kept going and just chalked it up to be bad water quality. Now with a big plastic block, I sanded it before I gave it to Mr. Clayfect so one of his fancy machines could fix the corners. And after that, I wet sanded it a lot with a lot of different grains, all in all, to make it as smooth as possible. Hopefully making the sculpture looking somewhat decent, even with the heat damage, so to speak. And now let's put some ASMR music on to emphasize this oddly satisfying moment when I put on the last layer of resin. Isn't that just satisfying in a weird way? But with the size all covered up, that is it for this sculpture and it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Considering this being my first try at resin art, I actually think it went pretty okay. I mean, it's decent. Am I satisfied? No, not completely. But they do look cute. I hope you like them. Just like I hope to see you next time. But if you can wait until next time, why not click on the sculpture right? You're going to see another cute sculpture get made. But until then, bye!